Senator Plett.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, Senator McCallum, you clearly didn't have your question answered, as we usually don't a question period. I can assure you how I will vote, Senator McCallum, and without putting, no, I'll end it there. Colleagues, I too want to speak to this bill, and I'm happy that Senator Gold at least finally has admitted the government is opposed to it, and he has been doing his level best not to do that. He has been, usually doesn't get involved in private members' business, but he did here. Colleagues, we all spent the last week in our provinces and in our regions. I did as well, and I come from a very rural part of the country. There are a lot of grain farmers, there are a lot of hog farmers, dairy farmers, all who are so very much dependent on the heat and the drying mechanisms that they have. In my province, there is still a lot of corn out there that they are harvesting and needing to dry. I attended a hockey game on the weekend that my youngest grandson was playing at, and I had farmers come to me and thank our party for the work we are doing on behalf of farmers, and telling us how they felt abandoned by this government, by Senator Gold, by Minister Guilbeault, by the Prime Minister, how they felt abandoned, and how they could not wait for the next election when we would come forward with our climate action plan, and the first one will be to axe the tax, axe this tax. But colleagues, I also want to take a moment today to reflect a little bit on how this has gone over the last weeks, and Senator Cordy in her welcome address to our new senators talked about a silly season, and indeed we have that twice a year at least, and we've entered into ours this year early. And that silly season was clearly out there Thursday, November the 9th. And I want to speak a little bit about that because I think Canadians need to know what is happening in this chamber. And we have Canadians watching us. Believe me, Canadians have started taking an interest in the Senate, more than in all the years I have been, ever since our Prime Minister invoked that horrible Emergencies Act that was so unnecessary. Since that day, people across the country have been watching what the Senate is doing, and they are watching today. We have farmers in Ottawa today, some in the chamber, and I thank them for coming. I thank the farmers that are here in Ottawa today, this week, and they are planning on staying here. They want to see this bill passed. But the way things have transgressed here in the last while, I do want to take a moment to talk about that because I think it's important. And I think it was evidenced during our Senate statements today how important it is to talk about how things have transgressed here. When we have questions of privileges arising from people expressing their opinions and getting frustrated with stalling tactics, and then questions of privilege arise from that. We have had that here for 100 and how many years has this Senate been here? 160 some years. We have had that. And we have taken it on the chin. And there are senators here who have been here during what I call the good times, where things would have happened like happened last Thursday, and then we would have gone out and we would have had a beer together with the person that we were fighting with. And instead we have what we have now. accusations made. I don't know who one of the questions of privilege is referring to, but I do want to say this, and it may have been referring to me, it may be referring to a different senator or a group of, but I was called, as Senator Weld said earlier, I was called a bully last Thursday by a senator in this chamber. I was called a bully. I want to talk about that for a second. I don't like being called a bully. I also don't like being a bully. But I am passionate. I am passionate and I am dedicated to what I believe. I will never apologize for that. I will fight hard for my cause and my party. But I want to do it in a respectful manner, colleagues. And if I didn't on Thursday, that isn't acceptable. My wife asked me, when are you school children all going to grow up? And we are becoming to be similar to what the House of Commons is in their question period. And I take some responsibility for that. But I'll tell you something, colleagues, and this is very personal. Our present government still has not outlawed me going into my private room and praying. I'm sure they're working on a bill to do that, but they haven't yet. They're outlawing prayers at Remembrance Day services, but they have not outlawed prayer yet. I pray every night. God, help me to not let others dictate your attitude. Do not let your frustrations be dictated or be encouraged by others. Be professional. Be hard-headed, but be professional, God. That's what I want. I sometimes win that fight. I don't always. And Thursday I got angry. I got very angry. I don't think I conducted myself unprofessionally, but I got angry. Thursday, when we wanted to debate Bill C-234, and we wanted to call a vote to help our farmers across the country, we were impeded and stopped from doing that by an adjournment motion that I found very, very hard to accept. We had an amendment made by Senator Monsión, and her and I had a short discussion about this, and she had every right to make that amendment. No question. I do not, for 1 second, disagree with her right to make that amendment. Frivolous as it was, the intent of the amendment is to kill the bill. Let's be clear. That is the intent of the amendment. It doesn't matter how one twists that around. The intent is to kill the bill. And when Senator Gold says it won't kill the bill, he is not speaking the truth. An amendment will kill this bill. It will not see the light of day. We will not get it back into this chamber. Senator Cotter was clear about that when he spoke about this. That's the intent of this amendment. But, nevertheless, we bring amendments forward at third reading that have not passed at committee. So I won't stand here and point fingers at somebody else for doing exactly what we have done on occasion to stall, and probably to stall. But let's at least be honest about that. And then, when Senator Monsión was not done speaking, or at least just sitting down when Senator Clement was on her feet to adjourn the debate. The Speaker was standing while Senator Clement was standing, which, of course, Madam Speaker, you know we should not do. When the Speaker stands, we should be sitting, which I pointed out to Senator Clement. I don't know whether she heard me or not, but I pointed out to Senator Clement, you should not be standing when the Speaker is standing. When the Speaker sat down, we had 3 senators standing here and Senator Clement standing, so 4 senators, and Senator Tanis was standing over the other side. She first recognized Senator Clement, and then we spoke up. Then she asked Senator Batters whether Senator Batters had a question, and Senator Batters said yes, she did, and she asked Senator Monsian a question, and Senator Monsian answered the question. I think there was only one question. Senator Wells and I, again, were immediately on our feet, as was Senator Clement, and we were on our feet to debate. Senator Clement adjourned the debate. And the Speaker recognized her. I stood on a point of order. I called out a point of order. The Speaker heard me call out the point of order. I have yet to receive a ruling on the point of order. Still haven't received it, and yet here we are again debating. She then again recognized Senator Clement to adjourn, and Senator Clement's explanation for adjourning, both to us and in iPolitics, was that I adjourned because other senators wanted to speak. That's paraphrasing. I adjourned because other senators still wanted to speak. It's a bit of an oxymoron, senators. Senators want to speak, so I'll adjourn. I can understand when somebody adjourns when people are calling for the question and you're not ready for the question. Then somebody adjourns the debate. And you have a vote on an adjournment motion and you win or lose that and you move on. But when somebody is standing to speak on debate, a speaker doesn't allow an adjournment motion. But here we had it. We had an adjournment motion. We called a bell and we were frustrated. And I believe rightfully so. I believe we were very rightfully frustrated because we wanted to debate an amendment. Senator Wells, the sponsor of this bill, was on his feet. He's the sponsor of the bill, and he was not allowed to speak because the Speaker ruled that an adjournment motion could come ahead of debate. I have never seen that. I have twice since I have been in the Senate, since 2009, something similar has happened, but the first one was very distinctly different in that Senators Lankin and Senators Petitclerc on the national anthem bill tricked us. And they did the right thing. It had been a bill that had been debated for quite some time. They wanted question called. We didn't want to debate it any longer, but we didn't want to vote on it because we thought we would lose the vote. And so we made sure that there wasn't a vote taken. And Senators Lankin and Senator Petitclerc, who were sitting, I think Senator Petitclerc's seat was directly in front of Senator Lankin's. And Senator Lankin, as she was sitting down, Senator Petitclerc had her hand up, and the Speaker recognized her, and Senator Petitclerc called previous question, and that was the end of it. Now, I went and had words with the Speaker, but he was right. So, you know, Senator Lankin and I have talked about that. She won one there, and I accept that. But that was on a situation where somebody wanted to call question and somebody else wanted to stop it, not where somebody wanted to debate. I have never heard of something like that. I don't know why Senator Clement would have done that, and I do know that Senator Clement is not by herself in that. Clearly it was a team effort. I understand that. But nevertheless, then we are called bullies because we're upset. Not because we lost, but because it wasn't right. And it still isn't right. It still hasn't been corrected. Now we have questions of privilege that we need to deal with as a result of that. I'm not raising a question of privilege. I had words with that senator. To me, it's over. I don't need any recourse. I'm good. I will be passionate again, and I will fight again, and I will do what I can to move the Conservative cause, and in this case, not the Conservative cause, but the farmers' cause ahead. This is a bill, colleagues, that supports farmers. Farmers are both smart and they are efficient. Farmers know what is good for farmers. And if somebody took offense to my comment about people from Montreal and Toronto who have never been on a farm don't know better than what farmers know, I hope you don't raise a question of privilege on that, because I will say it here again. Farmers know better what's good for farmers than lawyers or plumbers from Montreal or Toronto. I agree on this. Thursday of last week, November 9th, had two farm groups in my office, one back to back. The first farm group were grain growers and hog farmers who are not dependent on supply management, as a matter of fact, oppose supply management. They were in my office and they wanted to talk about two issues. And they were very clear when we sat down. We have two issues, Senator. The first one is 234. You need to get 234 passed, Senator. We need 234. We need to be able to heat our barns. We need to be able to dry our grains. We need it passed. The other bill we want to talk about, Senator, is Bill 282. You have to defeat Bill 282. It's a bad bill. It will hurt our negotiations. Am I getting the bill right, Senator Gerba, 282? Yes, thank you. I was just, I got a quizzical look there from Senator Wu. I wanted to make sure that I had the right bill number. And they wanted me to make sure that that bill didn't pass. And they were agreed, all six of them that were in my office. We talked about it. I told them that I was fighting 234, and that was a full load for me right now, and we would get to 282. It was on a priority list for the progressive senators group, and that scroll we negotiated based on what other groups' priorities were. And I said, I believe your bill is there, and it will, or the 282 is there, and it will, in due course, go to committee. They left. The next group that came in was a group of dairy farmers, chicken farmers, egg producers. They said, Senator, we have two bills that we need your help with. We need you to pass 234 because we need to hit our chicken barns and our egg barns. We need your help on 234. What can you do to help us? So I told them what we were doing. I said, what's the other bill? 282. Senator, we need you to pass 282 as fast as possible. Oh, my word.
You speak on the amendment, please.
Address the chair, please, not me.
Speaker, could Senator Plett address the amendment, please?
Senator Plett, you want to speak on the point of order?
Yes, I want to speak on the point of order.
Okay.
I probably, in the last 5 minutes, Chair, colleagues, used the term 234 at least 20 times. How am I not speaking to 234?
Okay, Senator Wells, you on the point of order?
On the point of order.
On a point of order, Senator Wells.
So thank you for the first 80% of Senator Gould's speech, it was about what luminaries around the world say, how good the carbon tax is, not at all about the amendment. I don't understand. And generally, in these speeches, the speakers, in my history here, have always given some latitude as well to the to speeches if it's generally on topic.
Okay. Honourable colleagues, in my honest opinion, I believe that Senator Plett has done his best, Senator Gold also, in order to give some context to the issues that we are debating right now. So, therefore, Senator Plett, please continue your speech.
Thank you. So, before I was called, we were talking about 282. The supply management people want that bill. But the point I'm making, colleagues, is they are unified from coast to coast to coast on Bill 234 without, for Senator Monsion's sake, without this frivolous amendment. They are unified from coast to coast to coast. Every farmer wants 234. It's important for them. And colleagues, farmers know best. If they can find efficiencies to bring down the carbon footprint, they will do that because it benefits them as much as it benefits anybody else. They are good stewards. The other thing we had, colleagues, I'm probably going to get jumped on here again, but nevertheless, the other thing that we had on Thursday, we had a leaders' meeting that Tuesday morning. And we had talked about the passage of Bill C-234. And we had a verbal agreement by 5 leaders that 234 would come to a vote on Thursday last week. Everybody's making... Oh.
Senator Dalphond, vous avez un point d'ordre?
Senator Dalphond, do you have a point of order? Yes, Madam Speaker. I remember that Senator Plett already publicly accused me of disclosing something that had been said in a leaders' meeting, which was not supposed to be shared in the chamber. So I would like to send that point of order right back to him.
Not sure that there was a point of order in there. But I understand what you're saying, and I believe Senator Plett will also understand. Senator Plett on debate.
Well, our leaders' meetings are attended by staff. They are not confidential, and I will speak about them. I will speak about them here, and if that isn't acceptable, then I'm sure I won't be invited to the next one. And today's was canceled for some unknown reason. So maybe that's why. Nevertheless, we had an agreement. And Senator Cordy had to go and ask Senator Dalphond first whether he agreed before she could agree, but told us she would get back to us, and in fact told me that Thursday that she would get back to us, and that she did not say that we did not have agreement. Nevertheless, we've also been told many times by the different leaders that they do not whip, so they cannot guarantee anything. They can hope. We make an agreement and they can hope, but they cannot guarantee. But then, Thursday evening, 3 of the 5 leaders, even though they didn't control their caucuses and don't whip, don't do anything, just speak to people, they don't whip. I don't know what the terminology of whipping is, because apparently I do and they don't. But nevertheless, 3 of the 5 leaders voted in favor of the adjournment motion, so that we couldn't move along. Senator Monsion, I will now talk for a while, and then I might get off track a bit later again, but I will now speak for a while specifically about your amendment. Pay attention. The first thing I want to point out about this frivolous amendment is that Senator Batters asked, is this similar to the one presented at committee? I believe that was Senator Batters' question. I want to point out that this amendment is in fact not similar to the one presented at committee. It is not similar. It is identical. It is identical. It is exactly the same amendment which was considered and defeated by the Senate Standing Committee on Agriculture and Forestry. Of course, as I said earlier, and as Senator Monsian took advantage of, our rules permit senators to move amendments at third reading which have already been defeated at committee. But I find it odd that this amendment was the one chosen, since it adds no substantive value at all. Contrary to what Senator Gold was telling us, it provides no substantive value at all. Senator Monsian's amendment seeks to remove part of the bill which permits the government to initiate an extension of the sunset clause. As the bill is currently written, the sunset clause can be extended beyond 8 years by the following process. First, the government must be the one to initiate the extension by drafting a resolution providing for the postponement of the exemption. This resolution must specify how long that extension will be. Secondly, the government's resolution is then debated by both houses of Parliament and voted on. If it is passed by both houses, the exemption is extended as per the criteria proposed by the government in the resolution. I have trouble understanding why Senator Monsian would refer to this as a low-bar approach to extending the exemption. When an extension can only be initiated by the government through an order in council, only the government can determine the length of the extension, and the extension is not granted unless it is approved by both houses of Commons and the Senate. That, colleagues, is a pretty high bar. It is not some backdoor regulatory process which we only find out about after it is published in the Canada Gazette. It is public, democratic, accountable, and can fail at any point if it does not have the support of the government and both houses of Parliament. Furthermore, colleagues, this method of extending the time frame of a sunset clause is not unique to this bill. It has been used before, and it was incorporated into Bill C-30, the Fair Rail for Grain Farmers Act, as a means of allowing the government to expeditiously extend the rail interswitching provision under that law. And that is what the government did. Back in April of 2016, the Liberal government announced that it would use this very mechanism to, and I quote, work with Parliament to postpone for 1 year the repeal of certain provisions of the Canada Transportation Act that were enacted in 2014 by the Fair Rail for Grain Farmers Act. Cabinet drafted the corresponding proposal, which was then considered by both houses of Parliament and passed unanimously in this chamber on June 8, 2016. I'm not sure whether Senator Monsian had done her homework to find out about that. She was not in the Senate yet when that happened, but was appointed, I think, later that year. Colleagues, my point is very simple. The measure contained in Bill C-234 to extend the sunset clause is neither unique nor controversial. It was incorporated into previous legislation, and its utility evidenced by the fact that it was used by the current government with the consent of Parliament to extend a sunset clause. It has already proven to be legitimate and efficient for Parliament to manage existing sunset provisions in an expeditious manner, and there is no reason to remove it from Bill C-234. But Senator Monsian's amendment is not only unwarranted, it also carries no practical value. It will not change the scope of the exemption or the limit of its application. From a policy perspective, it will have zero impact for 8 years, and even then could easily be overridden by an amendment tucked away into a Budget Implementation Act. If you were opposed in principle to the exemption provided by this legislation, then you would propose an amendment that seeks to diminish it. If you were concerned about the scope of the exemption, then you would seek to limit it. If you did not like the sunset clause, then you would seek to shorten it or eliminate it. Yet this amendment does nothing of the sort. It does not propose to change the exemption, and it does not challenge the exemption. All it does is remove the flexibility for government to extend the time frame of the extension in an expedited fashion. However, while the amendment has no practical value, it carries significant political value for the Liberal government for one simple reason. Again, colleagues, it will kill the bill. Have you seen the movie Kill the Bill? This was discussed extensively at report stage, and to repeat what Senator Cotter said at committee, every amendment that we introduce into this bill puts in jeopardy the likelihood that the exemption in any form doesn't see the light of day. And that seems to me to be sad and ironic, since we supported an aspect of the exemption itself at this committee, particularly with respect to grain drying. Senator Cotter is correct. With this bill, it is all or nothing. Amending this bill is the same as defeating the bill. And colleagues, in my view, this is an undisguised motivation behind this amendment. It serves no other purpose. It was already considered at committee and defeated. It does not substantively change the impact or implementation of the bill, and it is easily overridden by a future government. In fact, in practical terms, the amendment is so benign that it would probably be an acceptable compromise to move the bill along, if it would move the bill along, except for one small problem. It guarantees that the legislation will never become law. And Senator Gold has been clear in his comments that the government opposes this, even though the majority of the House supports it, unanimously by 4 parties, and a handful of Liberals with that. And that, colleagues, is the only utility of this amendment, to carry the government's water and defeat the bill, even though it was passed, as I said, in the other place. Unanimous support of the Bloc, the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Green Party, along with a handful of Liberals. This bill is nonpartisan, colleagues, entirely nonpartisan. It is a multilateral effort to protect our agricultural industry. It has broad support across the agricultural sector and serves the practical purpose of ensuring that the existing exemptions provided to the agricultural industry are amplified uniformly. And yet, in the 11th hour, the government has now decided to make this political because of a tactical mistake they made in passing a carbon tax exemption, which favored one region of the country over the rest. So now they have decided to position Bill C-234 as a referendum on the carbon tax and as a whole on the future of Minister Guilbeault's tenure as the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. This is regrettable, colleagues, because now, instead of fighting for farmers, Minister Guilbeault is fighting for his job. Instead of working to keep the price of food down, he's been working the phone lines and calling senators to ask them to make sure this bill does not pass. And colleagues, he admitted that. He said, no, we do not whip senators. But yes, I called them, and I talked to them. Minister Wilkinson has made his calls. You know whether he's called you or not, I don't, but he admitted he had called senators to talk to them. He didn't call senators to ask them how the day was going. That, I think, we all agree with. The question now is, will his efforts succeed? After saving the bill by defeating the committee's report, will Liberal-appointed senators now cave and do the minister's bidding? I don't know the answer to that, but I hope for the sake of farmers, the answer is no. It is obvious that for some senators, the answer is yes. Senator Monsian introduced this frivolous amendment immediately after she did so, as I said. Debate was adjourned immediately. I still don't know the purpose of it. Here we are debating it, except we're a week later. Again, colleagues, farmers know best. Our costs, our farmers are expected to feed by 2050 almost 10 billion people. And we are taking every tool out of their toolbox to do that. I'm not sure whether Senator Delphon believes that eggs come from Safeway or whether they come from the farm. But in my province, they come from the farm. Now, you can have eggs at Safeway or Sobeys in a cooler, and it doesn't matter if the temperature is up or down a little bit. But you can't vary the temperature in a barn full of 10,000 little chicks. The question was posed by Senator Deakin about the emissions exempted, and 97% of farm emissions exempted, according to Minister Guilbeault. So I have a paper here from the Agricultural Carbon Alliance, what they said about Guilbeault's newest concerns on 234. But what they have said, we do not know. We have been unable to substantiate the minister's claim that 97% of emissions are exempted. What we do know is that despite existing exemptions for on-farm fuel use, farmers are still reporting carbon pricing bills that range from the thousands to the hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. If this cost for farmers equates to carbon taxes of only 3% of on-farm emissions, the cost to farmers, colleagues, the cost to farmers greatly outweighs any potential for emissions reduction, with no viable alternative, none. For necessary farm practices, the need to provide farmers with financial relief and making more working capital to invest in efficiencies becomes even more evident. And then they say this about the grain drying $500 million. The minister is incorrect in his assertion that the federal government allocated $500 million for energy-efficient grain dryers. On June 16, 2021, Minister Guilbeault, in her role as Agriculture Minister, announced $167 million for the Agricultural Clean Technology Program. This program allocated $50 million for energy-efficient grain dryers. This was a welcome announcement. However, agricultural stakeholders quickly pointed out that while $50 million for grain dryers may sound like a lot of money, in reality, colleagues, that would purchase less than 500 new grain dryers, and there are more than 65,000 grain farmers in Canada. So even with full uptake, the $50 million would still mean that approximately 64,500 grain dryers would not access funding for more energy-efficient grain dryers. Colleagues, this is not that big of a deal for the government, except it's their signature plan. And Minister Guilbeault has said, I'm resigning if there's another carve-out. And I'm going to ask him tomorrow whether he will keep his promise. I hope he does if we pass it. I'll encourage him. I hope you all join me. Colleagues, let's not hide behind an amendment. If you want to kill this bill, then stand up whenever we get to it. Let's defeat this amendment. Let's defeat every other amendment. And if you truly want to kill this bill, can stand up in this chamber when the final vote gets called and vote against this bill. Don't hide behind something and then say that we are trying to improve, because that's not the case. We all know that, and the farmers know that. If anybody here thinks that you're pulling the wool over the farmers' eyes by them believing you are somehow helping them, colleagues, they're not that dumb. They know what this will do. So vote against it. But colleagues, if ever there has been a case, and we have debated this, and I have far too often, from here and other places, accused senators here of being government senators when you say you are independents. You are not government senators. You may have been appointed by the Prime Minister. But you are not government. Many of you, most of you, have told this chamber that when the other house sends us a bill that they have passed in the other house, we have an obligation to do one of two things. Either improve it and send it over there, or vote for it, not vote against it. This amendment doesn't improve the bill. It's voting against it. That's not our job. Senator Gold is correct when he says they have a minority government. But that's what Canadians elected. And Canadians didn't want them to have a majority government because they didn't want them to have complete and full control. So now when we finally have a chance to show the world, to show Canada that we're going to stand up for them and we're going to stand up against this tyranny that we have over there, let's take that opportunity to do it. You're not voting against the person that appointed you because he said be independent. You've all told us that. He said be independent. I think he probably also said, and don't join the Conservative caucus, at least certainly implied, and so you haven't. But let's show the independence. And when this comes to a final vote, when this amendment comes up, and any other frivolous amendment, colleagues, at least vote against the amendment. And then when the bill comes to a final reading, if you really believe this is not good for the country, if you really want to pay double and triple for the eggs that you're buying now, if you really want to bankrupt farmers, then vote against the bill at the end. But vote against it. Don't sugarcoat it. Colleagues, I am going to stand up for farmers. I will do my best to stand up for farmers. I will remain passionate. And just as a closing little comment, a few weeks ago, colleagues, we welcomed a group of young ladies here, and we were unanimous because it was something we could all get behind. And when you can't get behind it, we can still be friends and we can still work together. We don't need to try to get other senators in trouble. We don't need to come forward with different questions of privileges and different points of order. Let's take each other's opinion seriously. I'm not going to in any way all of a sudden after this speech start making it easy on Senator Gold a question period, I assure you that. But I will try to be fair, and I will try to be fair here, but I will be passionate. And if something like last Thursday happens again, I'll probably do the same thing again, I'm not sure. But now, colleagues, I ask you, vote against this amendment at the first available opportunity. Vote for farmers. Vote for Bill C-234. Thank you, colleagues.
Senator Gold.